You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. What if I told you that most of the stress, frustration, and disrespect you experience doesn't come from what people do, but from how tightly you cling to what they say, think, or feel about you? What if the secret to becoming truly powerful isn't controlling others, but mastering your attachment to outcomes? Imagine walking into any room completely unshaken. No desperate need for approval. No emotional spikes when someone challenges you. No inner collapse when plans fall apart. Just steady, grounded certainty. That's what detachment gives you. Not coldness, not indifference, power. When you master detachment, you stop reacting. You start choosing. You become untouchable, not because life stops testing you, but because nothing can hook into you anymore. Insults lose their sting. Rejection loses its drama. Chaos loses its grip. In this video, you're going to learn how to build that kind of inner armor the Stoic way. And I urge you, watch until the very end. Each idea builds on the last, and by the time we finish, you won't just understand detachment, you'll feel it. Number 1, detachment is power, not indifference. Detachment is power, not indifference. You need to let that sink in. So many people confuse detachment with coldness, with apathy, with shutting down your heart and pretending you don't care. That's not strength. That's armor made of fear. True detachment is something else entirely. It's the quiet confidence of knowing that your inner state does not belong to the chaos around you. It's choosing not to hand over your peace every time someone pushes your buttons. It's caring deeply while refusing to be controlled. That is power. When you practice detachment, you're not withdrawing from life. You're stepping into it with clarity. You're deciding that your thoughts, your emotions, your reactions, those are yours to govern. As Epictetus said in the Enchiridion, some things are up to us and some things are not. That line isn't just philosophy. It's a dividing line between emotional slavery and personal sovereignty. You become powerful the moment you stop trying to control what isn't yours and start mastering what is. Your effort, your attitude, your choices, your response. Indifference says, I don't care. Detachment says, I care, but I won't cling. There's a massive difference. Indifference numbs you. Detachment sharpens you. Indifference is passive. It shrugs and walks away because it feels nothing. Detachment is deliberate. It stays steady because it refuses to be dragged. When you detach, you're not dead inside. You're disciplined inside. You feel everything, but you choose what gets to stay. Think about that for a second. You don't have to suppress emotion. You don't have to pretend disappointment doesn't sting or that frustration doesn't rise in your chest. You just don't let those feelings dictate your behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's detachment. It's not denial, it's direction. You acknowledge the emotion, you observe it, and then you guide yourself forward anyway. You become untouchable not because nothing affects you, but because nothing owns you. And here's where you need to get honest with yourself. How often do you tie your mood to outcomes? How often do you let someone else's opinion determine your sense of worth? That attachment, this need for validation, for control, for certainty, is what makes you vulnerable. When your happiness depends on results, you become fragile. When your identity depends on praise, you become easy to manipulate. Detachment severs those invisible strings. It tells you, do your best, then release the rest. This doesn't mean you stop striving. It means you stop obsessing. You pour your energy into the work, into the discipline, into the process. And then you let go of the outcome. You stop gripping so tightly. You stop checking, rechecking, replaying, overanalyzing. You trust your effort. You accept uncertainty. You breathe. Start practicing this today in small ways. When a thought begins to spiral, pause, literally pause. Take a slow breath and ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, practice releasing it. Visualize setting it down. If the answer is yes, take one clear action and then let the mental noise fade. Don't rehearse conversations in your head. Don't argue with ghosts. Choose stillness over rumination. Another exercise, train your response delay. When something provokes you, don't react instantly. Give yourself a count of 5, just 5. In that gap, remind yourself that you are not obligated to respond emotionally. You are allowed to choose your tone, your words, your silence. That small delay builds enormous strength over time. It rewires you. It shifts you from impulsive to intentional. Detachment also means loosening your grip on expectations. Expectations are subtle contracts you write in your mind and hand to other people without telling them. When they don't fulfill those silent agreements, you feel betrayed. But here's the truth. Most suffering comes from insisting reality should be different. The Stoics knew this. They practiced negative visualization, not to become pessimistic but to become resilient. You can do the same. Briefly imagine that things might not go your way, not to dwell there, just to remind yourself that you will still be okay. Your worth does not fluctuate with circumstance. You must understand this. Attachment breeds fear. Fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure, and fear makes you reactive. Detachment dissolves that fear because it reminds you that you are enough without external reinforcement. When you stop needing a specific outcome, you become bold. You speak more clearly. You act more decisively. You walk differently. There's a quiet authority in someone who isn't desperate for approval, but don't confuse this with detaching from your values. You stay anchored to your principles. That's non-negotiable. Detachment isn't about drifting aimlessly. It's about rooting yourself internally instead of externally. Your standards stay high. Your effort stays consistent. Your integrity stays intact. What you release is the frantic need for control over everything else. Try this. At the end of each day, reflect on one situation that stirred you emotionally. Write down what you felt. Then write down what was actually within your control in that moment. You'll start to see a pattern. Most of what agitated you wasn't yours to manage. That realization is freeing. Over time, you'll respond differently, not because you're cold, but because you're clear. There's also a deeper layer to this. Detachment allows you to love without possession, to care without anxiety, to commit without clinging. When you stop trying to own people or outcomes, your relationships become lighter, healthier. You show up fully, but you don't try to cage what cannot be caged. You understand that everything is temporary. That awareness doesn't make you bitter. It makes you grateful and grounded. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't force. You align, you act, and you release. That's power. And here's the paradox. The more detached you become, the more effective you are, because your energy isn't leaking through worry. Your mind isn't cluttered with imaginary scenarios. You're present, focused, calm. You move with intention instead of tension. That calm presence unsettles those who rely on emotional volatility. You can't be baited easily. You can't be thrown off course by every shifting wind. So begin, not tomorrow, now. Practice noticing when you cling, when you crave reassurance, when you replay conversations, when you try to micromanage outcomes. Instead of judging yourself, gently pull back. Say internally, this is not mine to control. Feel the release. It might be uncomfortable at first. You're used to gripping tightly. Let your hands relax. Detachment is not about becoming distant from life. About becoming deeply rooted in yourself. It's about understanding that your peace is too valuable to trade for fleeting validation. It's about recognizing that while you cannot command the world, you can command your mind. And when you truly grasp that, when you embody it, you become untouchable. Not because nothing happens to you, but because nothing destabilizes you without your permission. You remain steady in praise and in criticism, in gain and in loss, in noise and in silence. That steadiness is rare. Cultivate it, guard it, strengthen it daily. Detachment is power, not indifference, not withdrawal, not coldness, power. And it's already within you, waiting for you to claim it. Number 2, you stop reacting, you start choosing. When you master detachment, something subtle but powerful begins to happen inside you. You stop reacting and you start choosing. That shift sounds small. It is. It's the difference between being dragged by the current and steering your own vessel through it. Most people move through their days as if every comment, every delay, every inconvenience has a hook in their nervous system. They twitch, they flare up, they defend, they explain, they justify, and they call this just being human. But you don't have to live like that. You can interrupt that reflex. You can create space. And in that space, you can decide. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Read that again slowly. He's not denying that things happen. He's not pretending the world is gentle. He's telling you that your reaction is yours. It belongs to you. And if it belongs to you, then you can train it. You can refine it. You can discipline it until it becomes intentional rather than impulsive. Right now, if you're honest, there are moments when your reactions feel automatic. A word hits you and your chest tightens. A tone of voice shifts and your mind races. You fire back, withdraw, or spiral internally before you've even paused to ask, "Is this how I want to respond?" That's not choice. That's conditioning. That's habit. And habits can be broken. Detachment is not coldness. It's not indifference. It's not pretending you don't care. It's caring so deeply about your inner state that you refuse to hand it over to every passing stimulus. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. Notice the emphasis. Power over your mind, not over outcomes, not over other people, just your mind. That's where the work is. When you stop reacting, you're not suppressing emotion. You're witnessing it. There's a difference. Suppression pushes feelings down and lets them fester. Witnessing observes them without immediately acting on them. You feel the surge of irritation, but instead of letting it commandeer your behavior, you sit with it. You breathe. You let the wave rise and fall. You remind yourself, this is just a sensation. It will pass. You don't have to obey it. Start practicing this deliberately. Today, when you feel that familiar spark, the urge to respond instantly, to defend, to correct, to retaliate, pause for 5 full breaths. Not shallow ones, deep, slow breaths. Inhale through your nose, hold for a moment, exhale longer than you inhaled. While you do this, silently say to yourself, "I choose." Just those 2 words, "I choose." Let them anchor you, because you do. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about how many reactions are fueled by interpretations rather than facts. A look becomes disrespect. A delay becomes rejection. A disagreement becomes a personal attack. Your mind fills in the blanks with dramatic narratives, and then you react to the story you invented. Detachment means questioning the story before you respond to it. It means asking, "Is this true? Or is this my ego scrambling for control?" This requires courage. It's easier to lash out. It's easier to justify your reaction by saying, "They made me do it." But no one makes you react. That belief keeps you weak. When you accept that your response is your responsibility, you reclaim authority over your life. That can feel uncomfortable at first. It removes your favorite excuses, but it also removes your helplessness. You become untouchable not because nothing affects you, but because you refuse to be ruled by it. There's a quiet confidence that grows in you when you realize you don't have to answer every provocation. You don't have to mirror every mood. You don't have to match someone's chaos with your own. You can remain steady. And steadiness is intimidating. It signals depth, control, strength. Practice a second exercise. At the end of each day, reflect on 3 moments when you reacted automatically. Don't judge yourself, just observe. What triggered you? What story did your mind tell? What did you feel in your body? Then rewrite the scene mentally. Ask yourself, if I had been fully detached, what would I have chosen instead? This mental rehearsal is powerful. You are training your future self. You are building a new default response. The space between stimulus and response is where your freedom lives. Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic, captured this truth perfectly. Between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Detachment expands that space. Reaction shrinks it. So your job is simple, though not easy. Widen the gap. Slow your speech. Slow your breathing. Slow your movements when you feel activated. Speed is the ally of reaction. Slowness is the ally of choice. When you deliberately lower your pace, you signal to your nervous system that you are safe, that you are in control. Your body listens. Your mind follows. Remind yourself daily that not everything deserves your energy. You are not obligated to engage with every comment or correct every misunderstanding. Sometimes the strongest move is restraint. Sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. When you stop reacting impulsively, you conserve strength. You become selective, and selectivity is power. There will be discomfort in this process. Your ego will protest. It will say something, defend yourself, don't let that stand. But detachment whispers something wiser. Is this necessary? Is this aligned with who you want to be? Listen to the whisper. It is quieter, but it is stronger. You are building inner sovereignty. You are training yourself to respond from principle rather than impulse. That takes repetition. It takes awareness. It takes humility. But each time you choose instead of react, you reinforce a new identity. You become someone who is not easily shaken, someone who cannot be manipulated through emotion, someone who stands grounded while others scramble. Say this to yourself often: my peace is not for sale. Let it become a mantra. Let it guide you. You are not here to be a puppet of circumstance. You are here to exercise reason, to embody discipline, to cultivate calm. The Stoics didn't preach detachment as an abstract philosophy. They practiced it daily. They examined their thoughts. They corrected their impulses. They treated self-mastery as a lifelong craft, and so should you. You stop reacting, you start choosing. That is the hinge, that is the turning point. From that moment on, you are no longer at the mercy of every emotional gust. You are deliberate, you are measured, you are composed, and the world feels different when you move through it that way. Lighter, clearer, less threatening. This is not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming intentional. Feel deeply, care deeply, but decide consciously. When you do, you become untouchable, not because nothing reaches you, but because nothing controls you without your consent. And that truly is freedom. Number 3, emotional control makes you unpredictable. When you master detachment, something subtle but powerful happens inside you. You stop reacting on cue. You stop dancing to emotional strings that other people don't even realize they're pulling. And that's when you become unpredictable, not chaotic, not unstable, but steady in a way that unsettles anyone who expects to control you through your feelings. Emotional control doesn't make you cold, it makes you sovereign. It places a quiet distance between stimulus and response, and in that space, you gain leverage. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When you truly understand that, you stop being readable in the way most people are readable. You stop flinching, you stop over-explaining, you stop broadcasting every internal tremor across your face and voice. Instead, you choose, and choice is power. Most people are predictable because they are emotional echo chambers. Praise them and they light up. Criticize them and they tense. Ignore them and they chase. Challenge them and they defend. You can almost script their reactions. But when you train yourself to pause, to regulate, to observe your emotions rather than obey them, you interrupt that script. You become less mechanical, less reflexive. Someone might expect you to snap back and you don't. They might expect you to crumble and you stand still. They might expect you to seek validation and you remain grounded. This unpredictability is not about playing games, it's about being internally anchored. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this and you will find strength. When you truly absorb that, you stop handing your inner state to the outside world like it's public property. You need to practice this deliberately. Emotional control is not a personality trait, it's a discipline. Start small. When you feel the surge, anger, embarrassment, defensiveness, don't suppress it, but don't spill it either. Notice it, label it silently. This is irritation. This is pride. This is fear. By naming it, you create distance. You remind yourself that you are the observer of the emotion, not the emotion itself. Then breathe. Slow, steady breaths. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Feel your body settle. That tiny pause is where unpredictability is born, because instead of reacting in the expected way, you are recalibrating. Understand this clearly. When people cannot predict your emotional reactions, they lose their leverage over you. If someone knows exactly what button to push to provoke you, you are not in control, they are. But when you refuse to be baited, when you decline to give them the reaction they were fishing for, the dynamic shifts. Calm becomes disruptive. Silence becomes strategic. Your steadiness forces others to confront themselves instead of manipulating you. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." Emotional bravery is the courage to feel without exploding, to stand firm without posturing. It is the refusal to be dragged into emotional theatrics. This does not mean you become expressionless or detached from humanity. It means you choose when and how to express. There's a difference. Emotional control is not about freezing your heart, it's about mastering its temperature. You can still care deeply, but you don't hemorrhage energy. You don't react just to prove that you feel. Instead, you ask yourself, is this reaction useful? Does it align with who I want to be? If the answer is no, you let it pass. Not because you are weak, because you are disciplined. Make this a daily exercise. Each night, reflect for a few minutes. Ask yourself, where did I react automatically today? Where did I pause and choose instead? Don't judge yourself harshly, just observe. Over time, that awareness sharpens. You begin to catch yourself in the moment rather than in hindsight. And when you catch yourself, you can pivot. That pivot, small, invisible to most, is the difference between being controlled and being untouchable. There's another layer to this. Emotional control disrupts expectations. When you don't react as predicted, you create psychological space. People are used to patterns. When patterns break, they reassess. Your calm forces them to think rather than assume. It keeps them slightly off balance, not because you are trying to intimidate them, but because you are not feeding the predictable cycle. And unpredictability, when rooted in composure, commands respect. Not loud respect, quiet respect. You must also train your internal dialogue. When something triggers you, your mind wants to narrate it dramatically. This is unfair. They're disrespecting me. I can't believe this. Catch that narrative early. Replace it with something steadier. This is an event. This is a test. This is temporary. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that events are neutral. It is our judgments that disturb us. Practice stripping events of the extra story you add. The fewer stories you create, the fewer emotional spikes you experience. And here's the deeper truth. Unpredictability born from emotional control makes you untouchable because it protects your inner peace. If your mood can be hijacked by every external comment or shift in tone, you are constantly at the mercy of others. But when you decide that your internal state is your responsibility, you stop outsourcing your stability. You become less reactive, less needy, less eager to prove yourself. That self-containment changes how you move through the world. Your words become more measured. Your presence becomes heavier, not in a burdensome way, but in a grounded way. Commit to micro-challenges. The next time you feel the impulse to respond immediately, wait 10 seconds. The next time you feel misunderstood, resist the urge to over-explain. The next time you feel praised, accept it calmly without inflating. Train yourself to stay level. Emotional spikes, high or low, both make you predictable. Consistency, not volatility, builds power. Remember, detachment is not indifference. It's clarity. It's the ability to see your emotions without being swallowed by them. It's the discipline to say, I feel this, but I am not compelled by it. When you operate from that place, you become difficult to rattle, difficult to read, difficult to manipulate. And in a world that thrives on reaction, your restraint feels almost radical. So practice, every day. Guard your reactions the way you would guard something valuable, because they are valuable. Your reactions shape your identity. They signal your boundaries. They reveal your self-mastery. When you stop reacting automatically, you start responding intentionally. And when your responses are intentional, you step out of the predictable script most people live by. Master this and you will notice something shift. You won't feel the same urgency to defend yourself. You won't feel the same pull to retaliate. You won't feel the same need to win every exchange. You'll feel steadier, quieter, stronger. And from that steadiness comes a kind of unpredictability that cannot be gamed. Emotional control makes you unpredictable because it makes you free. Free from reflex. Free from manipulation. Free from the exhausting cycle of emotional reactivity. And when you are free in that way, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing controls you without your permission. Number 4, you can't be manipulated when you don't cling. You can't be manipulated when you don't cling. Sit with that for a moment. Really let it settle into your bones. Manipulation only works when there's a hook in you, when there's something you're gripping so tightly that the mere threat of losing it makes your pulse jump. Approval, status, control, affection, being right. When you cling, you hand over leverage. When you loosen your grip, you quietly remove the handle anyone could use to steer you. This is not about becoming cold or indifferent. It's about becoming steady. It's about standing so firmly within yourself that no external tug can pull you off balance. Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "When you kiss your child, say to yourself that you only kiss a human being and thus you will not be disturbed if it dies." That sounds harsh at first, almost unbearable, but he wasn't teaching cruelty. He was teaching clarity. Everything outside your character is on loan. When you accept that truth, you stop bargaining with the universe. You stop saying, "I need this to stay the same so I can stay calm." Instead, you say, "I will stay calm regardless." That is the shift. That is the power. When you don't cling, flattery loses its shine. Threats lose their sting. Silent treatments lose their drama. Why? Because you're no longer desperate for a particular outcome. And desperation is the doorway through which manipulation enters. If you crave validation, someone can dangle it. If you fear rejection, someone can hint at it. If you must win, someone can provoke you. But when you practice detachment, you interrupt that entire cycle. You observe your own cravings the way a Stoic would observe the weather, present, noticeable, but not commanding obedience. You have to train this. It doesn't happen because you read a quote and nod. It happens because you begin catching yourself in the act of clinging. Pay attention to the tightness in your chest when something doesn't go your way. Notice the urge to argue, to defend, to chase, to prove. That tightening is attachment revealing itself. Don't judge it, just see it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The moment you recognize that your agitation is coming from your own grip, not from the external situation, you reclaim that power. Start small. Today, deliberately let go of the need to correct every misunderstanding. Resist the impulse to respond instantly. When you feel the pull to control how someone perceives you, pause. Breathe slowly. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of losing right now? Name it plainly: respect, connection, image. Then remind yourself that your worth does not shrink simply because someone's opinion shifts. That reminder is not passive. It's an act of inner defiance. It's you choosing sovereignty over reflex. Detachment is not apathy. It's disciplined caring. You care about your values, your integrity, your chosen path. But you stop clinging to outcomes that were never fully yours to command. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." So much manipulation works by feeding that imagination, by suggesting catastrophic loss, social exile, emotional deprivation. When you detach, you shrink the imagination back to size. You return to what is real: your breath, your choices, your character. And from that grounded place, no one can push you into emotional chaos without your consent. Here's a practical exercise. For the next week, practice voluntary discomfort in small ways. Choose the slightly inconvenient option. Delay a pleasure. Sit with a craving without immediately satisfying it. This strengthens your tolerance for not getting what you want. The stronger that tolerance becomes, the less anyone can control you by threatening to withhold something. You are teaching your nervous system that you can survive unmet desires. that you are still whole, still steady, even when you don't receive what you hoped for. Another exercise, negative visualization. Each morning, briefly imagine losing something you value, not to spiral into fear, but to rehearse resilience. Picture yourself responding with composure. Feel the initial sting, then imagine it dissolving into acceptance. This isn't pessimism, it's preparation. When you've already contemplated loss, you're less likely to panic if circumstances shift. And panic is the manipulator's playground. Calm is their obstacle. You must also detach from the need to be understood. This one is subtle. The hunger to be seen correctly can make you reactive. You over-explain, you argue, you chase validation. Instead, practice saying what aligns with your truth and then letting the rest go. Some people will misunderstand you. Let them. Your job is to live with integrity, not to manage every interpretation. The more you internalize that, the more unshakable you become. There's a quiet confidence that emerges when you stop clinging. It's not loud, it doesn't demand attention. It doesn't need to dominate a room, it simply stands. You move differently, you speak more deliberately, you react less, and people feel that steadiness. They may not be able to articulate it, but they sense that there's nothing obvious to grab onto, no visible insecurity to exploit, no frantic need to please. That's what makes you untouchable, not aggression, not aloofness, but inner sufficiency. Be honest with yourself, though. Where are you still bargaining? Where are you still thinking, if I lose this, I lose everything? That belief is the root of your vulnerability. Challenge it, strip it down. You are more than any role, any relationship, any possession. The Stoics constantly return to this idea. You are a rational being capable of virtue. Everything else is secondary. When you organize your life around that principle, manipulation has nowhere to land. You will still feel emotions. Detachment doesn't erase them. It simply prevents them from owning you. Anger may flare. Disappointment may rise. Let them pass through without turning them into demands. Say to yourself, this is a feeling, not a command. That single sentence can interrupt countless impulsive reactions. And each time you interrupt that impulse, you strengthen your freedom. So begin today. Loosen your grip. Notice where you're clenching and soften it. Practice wanting without needing. Practice caring without clinging. Practice speaking without chasing. Every time you choose composure over compulsion, you reclaim a piece of yourself. And over time, you'll realize something remarkable. The less you grasp at the world, the less the world can shake you. That is detachment. That is power. And that is how you become untouchable. Number 5, validation loses its grip on you. Validation loses its grip on you the moment you decide that your worth is not a public vote. And that decision is quieter than you think. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or applause. It begins in a private shift, almost invisible, when you stop scanning faces for approval and start anchoring yourself to something deeper. You begin to understand what the Stoics meant when they insisted that your power lies within. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good." When you truly absorb that, you stop begging the world to confirm what you should already know. You stop outsourcing your self-respect. You have to train yourself to notice how often you crave validation. Not to judge it, just to see it. Watch how your mood subtly rises and falls based on reactions, praise, attention, agreement. Observe how easily a compliment inflates you and a criticism deflates you. That fluctuation is the leash, and detachment is simply cutting it. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's not a poetic exaggeration. It's a challenge. Can you endure being misunderstood without rushing to correct the narrative? Can you hold your ground without demanding applause? This is where untouchability begins. When validation loses its grip, you no longer perform. You move with intention, not exhibition. Your decisions stop orbiting around what will impress, attract, or silence others. Instead, they align with your principles. That alignment creates a stillness in you. And that stillness is intimidating. Because a person who cannot be baited by praise or provoked by disapproval becomes unpredictable in the best way. You're no longer dancing to invisible strings. You act because it is right, not because it will be noticed. But this shift doesn't happen by accident. You must practice it deliberately. Start small. The next time you feel the urge to explain yourself unnecessarily, pause, let the silence stretch. Feel the discomfort, don't rush to fill it. That discomfort is withdrawal from the addiction to validation. Stay with it. Breathe through it. Remind yourself that your value does not increase when someone agrees with you, and it does not decrease when they don't. Repeat that until it feels less like a slogan and more like truth. You also need to separate feedback from identity. This is crucial. When someone offers praise, accept it lightly. When someone criticizes, examine it calmly. Neither defines you. Marcus Aurelius warned, choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Validation and criticism only penetrate when you let them fuse with your sense of self. Instead, treat them as information, nothing more. Useful data perhaps, or noise, but never a verdict on your worth. Detachment doesn't mean indifference, it means sovereignty. You still care about your craft, your character, your growth. You just stop caring about applause. You stop measuring your internal state against external reactions. This is subtle work. It requires you to build a private standard. What do you believe is honorable? What do you consider disciplined? What does integrity mean to you? Write these down, define them clearly. Then hold yourself accountable to that list, not to shifting opinions. Here's a practical exercise. Each evening, conduct a quiet audit. Ask yourself 3 questions. Did I act according to my principles today? Did I seek approval where it wasn't necessary? Did I remain steady when faced with praise or blame? Answer honestly. No drama, no self-attack. Just awareness. This daily reflection builds inner authority. Over time, you'll notice something profound. You won't need as much reassurance. You won't replay conversations in your head searching for signs of approval. The hunger weakens. Another exercise, deliberately withhold self-promotion. Resist the impulse to broadcast every achievement or justify every decision. Let your work exist without commentary. This strengthens your tolerance for invisibility. And invisibility, when chosen, is power. Because if you can remain steady without being seen, you cannot be manipulated by attention. Seneca reminded us, "He who is brave is free." And bravery here is the courage to stand alone in your own evaluation of yourself. There will be moments when the urge for validation spikes. That's natural, you're human. When it happens, don't shame yourself. Instead, question it. What are you actually seeking? Safety, belonging, confirmation? Trace it back. Often the desire for validation is a disguised fear of rejection. Face that fear directly. Tell yourself calmly that rejection does not erase your value. It only reveals misalignment. And misalignment is information, not condemnation. As validation loses its grip, your emotional landscape stabilizes. You stop riding emotional highs and lows based on external reactions. You become harder to provoke, harder to flatter, harder to control. Praise no longer seduces you into complacency. Criticism no longer knocks you off balance. You listen, you assess, and you move on. That steadiness is what makes you untouchable. Not arrogance, not coldness, composure. You'll notice that conversations feel different. You speak more slowly. You don't rush to impress. You don't scramble to defend. There's space between stimulus and response. In that space lives your freedom. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." When validation loses its grip, your reactions become deliberate rather than reflexive. You choose your response instead of being dragged by emotional impulses. To deepen this detachment, practice voluntary discomfort. Do something meaningful without telling anyone. Complete a task without announcing it. Improve in silence. This builds an internal reservoir of confidence that does not depend on witnesses. The more you prove things to yourself privately, the less you need public confirmation. You begin to trust your own assessment. That trust is unshakable. You must also watch your self-talk. If your inner voice constantly asks, "Did they like that?" redirect it. Replace it with, "Was that aligned with my values?" Shift the metric. The question you ask yourself shapes your focus, and your focus shapes your emotional state. Train your mind like you would train a muscle. Repetition builds strength. Over time, something liberating happens. You feel lighter, not because people suddenly approve of you more, but because their approval simply matters less. You still respect others, you still value connection, but you are no longer enslaved by perception. Your identity stops being a performance and becomes a practice, a daily commitment to act with integrity regardless of who is watching. And that's the paradox. When you stop chasing validation, you often gain quiet respect. But by then, it doesn't control you. It passes through you without sticking. You remain grounded. You remain centered. You remain free. So begin today. Notice the pull, interrupt it. Breathe through the discomfort of not being affirmed. Remind yourself of Marcus Aurelius' words. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Let that strength grow. Let validation lose its grip. And as it does, watch how untouchable you become. Not because you've hardened, but because you've rooted yourself so deeply within that no external wind can uproot you. Number 6, criticism no longer shakes your core. When you truly master detachment, criticism stops feeling like a personal attack and starts sounding more like background noise. Not because you've hardened yourself or numbed your emotions, but because you've decided deeply and deliberately that your inner stability is not up for negotiation. You stop handing strangers the keys to your nervous system. You stop allowing someone else's passing judgment to define the temperature of your day. And this shift doesn't happen by accident. You build it, you practice it, you earn it. As Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Read that again. Let it settle. The sting of criticism doesn't come from the words themselves. It comes from the meaning you attach to them, so you begin there. You train yourself to pause before assigning meaning. You interrupt the reflex to defend. You refuse to let your pulse race just because someone else has an opinion. Criticism used to feel like a verdict. Now it feels like information, or sometimes like nothing at all. That's detachment. You realize that most criticism says more about the speaker than it does about you. Their mood, their insecurities, their expectations, their worldview. Why should that rearrange your inner world? Why should their interpretation become your identity? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed." That's not denial. It's discipline. You make a choice moment by moment not to internalize what doesn't belong to you. You let it pass through like wind through an open window. You don't slam the window shut. You don't chase the wind. You simply remain, but let's be honest. Your ego doesn't like this at first. It wants to argue, it wants to explain, it wants to prove itself. So you train your ego the way you train a restless muscle. When criticism comes, you breathe slowly and deeply. Inhale for 4 counts. Hold, exhale for 6. Feel your feet on the ground, relax your jaw, unclench your hands. This is not weakness, it's control. You are teaching your body that words cannot wound you unless you permit them to. Over time, your nervous system learns a new pattern. Calm becomes your default. Composure becomes your signature. You also learn to separate your worth from your performance. This is crucial. If your identity is fused to every action you take, then every critique feels like a threat to your existence. But when you detach, you understand that you are not your latest outcome. You are not a single opinion. You are not the echo of someone else's dissatisfaction. Seneca reminded us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Notice how much of your pain from criticism is imagined, stories about what it means, fears about what it implies. You can dismantle those stories. You can question them. Is this comment truly a reflection of your character, or is it simply a perspective? Is there something useful here, or is it just noise? Ask yourself calmly. Evaluate without emotion. Extract what's constructive, discard the rest. This doesn't mean you become indifferent to growth, quite the opposite. When criticism no longer shakes your core, you're finally strong enough to examine it objectively. You're no longer defending your identity so you can assess feedback with clarity. You become less reactive and more reflective. That's power, real power. Instead of collapsing inward or lashing outward, you stand still. You listen. You decide. And that decision comes from reason, not wounded pride. Start practicing mental distancing. When someone criticizes you, imagine placing their words on a table in front of you, not inside your chest, not carved into your self-image. On the table, look at them from a slight distance. Turn them around. Ask, is this true, partly true, not true at all? This simple visualization creates space. And in that space, you regain control. You are no longer fused with the judgment. You are observing it. The Stoics called this the discipline of assent, choosing which impressions to accept. You don't have to accept every negative impression that enters your mind. You can decline it calmly, firmly. There's another practice you should adopt: voluntary exposure to minor discomfort. Invite small criticisms. Reflect on them privately. Write down the ones that sting and dissect why they sting. Not to shame yourself, but to understand your attachments. Where are you overly invested in approval? Where do you crave validation? Awareness weakens the grip of those cravings. And when you crave less approval, criticism loses its leverage over you. You become lighter, less needy, more centered. You must also cultivate an internal source of validation. If your sense of worth depends on external applause, then external disapproval will always destabilize you. Build a quiet confidence rooted in your values. Ask yourself daily, did I act with integrity? Did I stay aligned with my principles? If the answer is yes, then let the world chatter. Marcus Aurelius advised, look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look. That source is within you, not in someone's approval, not in their criticism. Within, detachment doesn't mean you stop caring, it means you care wisely. You care about truth, about growth, about virtue, but you stop caring about every passing opinion. You become selective with your attention. And attention is your most valuable currency. Don't spend it on resentment. Don't waste it replaying conversations in your head. Redirect it toward improvement, toward discipline, toward the steady construction of your character. Here's a practical exercise to anchor this habit. At the end of each day, reflect on any criticism you received. Write it down in 2 columns. In the first column, note the factual content. In the second, note your emotional reaction. Then challenge that reaction. Was it proportional? Was it necessary? Over time, you'll see patterns. You'll see how often your mind exaggerates threats, and with awareness comes freedom. You can also rehearse criticism mentally. Imagine someone questioning your abilities or decisions. Visualize yourself responding with calm neutrality. No defensiveness, no sarcasm, just steady presence. The Stoics practiced negative visualization to prepare their minds. You can do the same. By rehearsing discomfort, you reduce its shock value. You become psychologically prepared, and preparedness breeds composure. Eventually, something subtle shifts. Criticism still exists, but it no longer penetrates. It brushes against you and falls away. You don't feel compelled to correct every misunderstanding. You don't feel urgent about defending your name. You trust that your consistent character will speak louder than any rebuttal. That's detachment. That's strength. You are no longer fragile. You are no longer easily provoked. You are steady. And in that steadiness, you become untouchable. Not because no one speaks against you, but because nothing spoken can uproot you. You have anchored yourself too deeply. You've trained your mind to filter, to evaluate, to release. Criticism becomes a tool, not a weapon. A passing cloud, not a storm. And you stand beneath it, calm and unmoved, knowing that your core is yours alone to guard. Number 7, silence becomes your default response. When you master detachment, silence stops feeling awkward and starts feeling powerful. It becomes your default response, not because you're withdrawn, not because you're passive, but because you finally understand that you don't have to react to everything that touches your senses. You don't have to answer every opinion. You don't have to defend every misunderstanding. You don't have to chase every provocation thrown in your direction. You begin to realize that most things are invitations into emotional chaos, and you simply decline, calmly, quietly, without drama. That's the shift. And once you taste it, you won't want to go back. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." Think about that. No opinion, no reaction, no immediate commentary, just space. And in that space, you are free. When silence becomes your default, you're not suppressing yourself, you're choosing yourself. You're choosing clarity over impulse, strength over noise, discipline over ego, and it takes discipline. Your mind will itch to respond. Your pride will beg you to correct, to argue, to prove. But you don't have to obey every internal command. You can observe the urge and let it dissolve. Silence is not emptiness. It is restraint with intention. It is emotional minimalism. When something tries to hook you, your old habit might be to bite. Quick reply, sharp defense, immediate explanation. But detachment teaches you to pause, and then to pause again. In that pause, something remarkable happens. You regain authorship over your state. You stop being a puppet pulled by circumstances. You become the one holding the strings. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Notice he didn't say you must react. Reaction is optional. That's the hidden power. Silence is often the highest form of reaction because it denies negativity the fuel it needs. When you don't respond, you don't escalate. When you don't explain, you don't entangle. When you don't rush to fill the air, you create gravity. Your presence becomes heavier, more grounded, harder to shake. You need to practice this deliberately. Start small. The next time you feel the impulse to respond immediately, don't. Count 5 slow breaths. Inhale through your nose, hold briefly, exhale longer than you inhaled. Let the surge pass. Feel how the body softens when you refuse to engage. Do this consistently. You're training your nervous system to associate provocation with calm, not combat. You are rewiring yourself. There's a difference between silence born from fear and silence born from strength. Fearful silence shrinks. Strong silence expands. The former feels tight in your chest. The latter feels steady in your spine. When you master detachment, your silence carries weight because it is chosen. You're not silent because you have nothing to say. You're silent because you refuse to waste energy where it doesn't serve you. That distinction changes everything. Seneca warned, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Most of what tempts you to speak is imagined danger, imagined disrespect, imagined loss of status, imagined judgment. Your mind fabricates threats, and your ego scrambles to defend itself. But when you detach, you see the illusion. You see that your worth is not up for debate. It doesn't rise or fall based on someone else's tone. And once you know that deeply, silence feels natural. You no longer feel compelled to protect an identity that cannot truly be harmed. Make this a daily discipline. Set aside 10 minutes each day to sit in intentional silence. No phone, no music, no distraction, just you and your thoughts. Watch them. Don't chase them. Don't argue with them. Let them come and go like clouds. This is mental weight training. The more comfortable you become with internal silence, the easier external silence becomes. If you can sit calmly with your own noise, you won't panic in someone else's. There's also power in delaying your responses. You don't owe immediacy to anyone. When something demands an answer, let time work for you. Time filters emotion. Time exposes what truly matters. Often, what felt urgent dissolves when given space. Practice saying less than you want to. Cut your usual response in half. Notice how much of what you planned to say was unnecessary. Precision grows in restraint. Silence sharpens perception. When you're not busy preparing your reply, you're observing. You notice tone shifts, body language, subtext. You see more because you're not clouded by the need to perform. And observation is power. The Stoics prized perception because it allows you to respond from reason, not reflex. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over. It stands unmoved. The rock doesn't argue with the ocean. It doesn't shout back at the storm, it simply remains. You can cultivate this steadiness physically. Adjust your posture when you choose silence. Relax your jaw, lower your shoulders, slow your breathing. These subtle cues signal to your body that there is no threat. Over time, your silence will stop feeling like suppression and start feeling like sovereignty. You'll notice that others become unsettled by your calm, not because you're intimidating on purpose, but because you're unhookable. You don't give them emotional handles to grab. And understand this, silence doesn't mean you never speak. It means you speak deliberately. When you finally choose to use words, they land with force because they are rare and measured. You're no longer spilling language to fill discomfort. You're using it as a tool, controlled, intentional, clean. Challenge yourself this week. For 7 days, commit to not defending yourself unnecessarily. If criticism comes, let it sit. If praise comes, let it pass. Practice neutrality. Journal each evening about moments where you wanted to react but didn't. Reflect on how it felt. Did the world collapse? Or did you feel a quiet expansion inside? Track that expansion. That's detachment growing roots. You become untouchable not because nothing tries to touch you, but because you stop allowing everything to enter. Silence is your gatekeeper. It filters, it protects, it preserves energy. And energy is currency. Spend it wisely. Stop scattering it in every direction. When silence becomes your default, you realize something liberating. You are not obligated to participate in every exchange. You can opt out. You can observe. You can remain composed. And in that composure, you find freedom. Real freedom. The kind that doesn't need applause or validation. The kind that rests easily within itself. So begin today. Pause more, speak less, breathe deeper. Let stillness replace reactivity. Remember that your power is not in how quickly you answer, but in how firmly you stand. And when you master this, when silence feels like home rather than discomfort, you'll notice something subtle yet profound. The world may still make noise, but you no longer echo it. Number 8, you focus on what you control, release what you can't. You become untouchable the moment you draw a clean, unwavering line between what belongs to you and what does not. That line is your power. It is your sanity. It is your freedom. And most people never draw it. They blur it with worry, with obsession, with the desperate need to manage outcomes that were never theirs to command. But you are different now. You're learning to focus on what you control and release what you can't. That single shift changes everything. As Epictetus wrote in the Enchiridion, some things are up to us and some things are not. It sounds simple, almost obvious. Yet if you truly absorbed it, if you lived it, you would feel a steel-like calm settle into your bones. You would stop bleeding energy into places that will never return it. Right now, you have 2 domains in front of you at all times, your inner world and the outer world. The outer world is loud, chaotic, unpredictable. Other people's opinions, their moods, their decisions. The economy, the timing of events, outcomes, applause, criticism, none of it bends because you clench your fists. None of it obeys your anxiety. And yet, if you are not careful, you will hand your peace over to it as if it were currency. Stop, pause, bring your attention back inward, your thoughts, your judgments, your effort, your values, your discipline, your response. This is your territory. This is sovereign ground. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Not comfort, strength. There is a difference. Detachment is not apathy. It is not laziness. It is not a withdrawal from life. It is precision. It is choosing to pour your full intensity into what you can shape while refusing to wrestle the wind. When you focus on what you control, you become sharper, cleaner, more deliberate. Instead of scattering your attention across 10 uncontrollable variables, you bring it home to one question. What is mine to do right now? That question cuts through confusion. It demands action. It anchors you in the present, and it strips away the illusion that you must dominate every outcome to be secure. You need to practice this deliberately, not once, not occasionally, daily. Start by observing your mind. Notice how quickly it drifts toward outcomes. Notice how it tries to predict, rehearse, manipulate, or pre-suffer. Gently interrupt that pattern. Ask yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is no, release it. Not angrily, not dramatically, just release it. Let it fall from your mental grip. Then redirect your attention to what is within reach, your preparation, your attitude, your effort. Epictetus insisted, make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens. That is not passivity, that is disciplined surrender to reality. You may feel resistance at first. Your ego wants guarantees, it wants applause, it wants certainty, but certainty is not yours to claim. Only conduct is, only character is. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Think about that. How much of your exhaustion comes from trying to control futures that do not exist yet? How much tension is self-inflicted because you are clinging to outcomes instead of committing to action? When you detach from what you cannot command, your nervous system quiets. You breathe deeper. You move with steadiness instead of urgency. And people sense it. They sense that you are not scrambling. You are anchored. Here is a simple exercise. Each morning, write 2 short lists. On the left, title it "Within My Control." On the right, "Not Within My Control." Be honest. Put your effort, your words, your boundaries, your preparation on the left. Put others' reactions, timing, and final results on the right. Once you finish, draw a line through the right column. Physically cross it out. Tell yourself, I release this. I will not negotiate with it today. Then commit to executing what remains on the left with excellence. Do this consistently. Watch how your mind begins to rewire itself. Watch how quickly clarity replaces chaos. Another practice, negative visualization, a technique the Stoics value deeply. Spend a few quiet minutes imagining that things do not go your way, not to frighten yourself, but to inoculate your expectations. Picture the loss of approval, the delay, the rejection. Then ask calmly, would I still have control over my response? The answer is always yes. That is your fortress. When you rehearse this mentally, you loosen your grip on preferred outcomes. You begin to understand that your stability does not depend on circumstances aligning perfectly. It depends on you showing up with integrity regardless. Detachment also requires you to question your attachments. What are you clinging to so tightly that it dictates your mood? Recognition, validation, control over other people's behavior. Be ruthless in examining these attachments. Ask yourself whether they are truly within your authority. If not, loosen your hold. You do not need to stop caring. You need to stop binding your peace to things that fluctuate beyond your command. When you release that dependency, something remarkable happens. You become emotionally untouchable, not cold, not distant, just grounded. Others can praise you without inflating you. They can criticize you without crushing you. Because your center of gravity is internal. There will be moments when you are tempted to interfere, to micromanage reality, to force a result. In those moments, breathe, slow down your reaction. Remind yourself that effort is yours, outcome is not. Repeat it if you must. Effort is mine, outcome is not. Let that rhythm steady you. Act with full commitment. Then step back mentally. Leave space for the world to unfold as it will. This is courage. It takes courage to release control. It takes strength to accept uncertainty without panic. But every time you practice it, you fortify your resilience. You are not here to dominate the uncontrollable. You are here to master yourself. That is the Stoic path. That is the path to becoming untouchable. When you focus relentlessly on your thoughts, your discipline, your virtues, you stop being tossed around by every external shift. You become stable in motion, calm in tension, clear in noise. And over time, this becomes your default state. You no longer chase control, you embody composure. So start today. Audit your worries. Separate illusion from influence. Redirect your energy, tighten your focus. Release the rest. Do it again tomorrow. And the next day. Build the habit until it becomes instinct. Because once you truly understand what is yours and what is not, you stop fighting reality. You align with it. And in that alignment, you find an unshakable strength that no one can take from you. Number 9, outcomes. Stop owning your peace. When you truly begin to practice detachment, something subtle but powerful shifts inside you. You stop negotiating your inner calm with external outcomes. You stop handing your nervous system over to things you cannot command. And that is when you start to feel untouchable, not cold, not indifferent, not withdrawn, just steady. Rooted, grounded in something deeper than success or failure. You finally understand what Epictetus meant when he said, "Some things are in our control and others not." You stop arguing with that truth. You start living it. Outcomes only own your peace when you believe they define you. That's the hidden trap. You think the result is a verdict on your worth, your intelligence, your future. So you cling, you brace, you tighten. And the tighter you grip, the more fragile you become. Your mood rises and falls with every shift in circumstance. But detachment invites you to loosen your hands. To do the work, yes. To care, absolutely. But to release the illusion that the final outcome has authority over your inner state. You begin to see that your peace is not a prize awarded after success. It is a discipline you protect regardless of the result. You have to train yourself for this. It will not happen by accident. The mind loves to forecast, to dramatize, to whisper that everything depends on what happens next. So you interrupt it. Gently, firmly. When you notice your thoughts racing toward a future result, pause and ask yourself, is this within my control right now? If the answer is no, practice stepping back. Not emotionally shutting down, but mentally creating space. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Sit with that, repeat it, let it rewire you. Your power lives in your response, not in the scoreboard of life. Detachment does not mean you stop striving. It means you redefine what winning actually is. Winning becomes showing up fully, acting with integrity, giving effort without bargaining for applause. When outcomes stop owning your peace, you measure your day by your character, not by external validation. That shift alone makes you resilient, because character is always available to you. Outcomes are not. You can wake up and decide to act with patience, discipline, courage. You cannot wake up and command the universe to cooperate. Start practicing this in small, controlled ways. Before you begin any task, say quietly to yourself, "My job is the effort. The result is not mine." Then act with intensity, focus, precision. When you finish, resist the urge to mentally replay and predict. Instead, breathe deeply and deliberately release it. Imagine placing the outcome outside of you as if setting down a heavy bag. This visualization is not childish. It is training. The brain responds to repetition. The more you rehearse letting go, the more natural it becomes. You will notice something else when you stop tying your peace to outcomes. Your anxiety decreases, but your effectiveness increases. That may sound contradictory. It is not. Anxiety scatters attention. Detachment sharpens it. When you are no longer obsessed with how things must turn out, you are free to engage fully in what is happening now. There is clarity in that, a clean, almost quiet intensity. You become less reactive and more deliberate. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Detachment dismantles that unnecessary suffering. It pulls you out of imagined futures and plants you back in the present moment where your real influence lives. There is a discipline you must adopt here. At the end of each day, conduct a brief internal audit. Ask yourself, did I allow external outcomes to disturb my inner balance? Where did I give my peace away? Do not judge yourself harshly. Just observe. Awareness is the first layer of mastery. Then ask, how could I respond differently next time? This reflective practice strengthens your ability to separate effort from result. Over time, you will notice the emotional spikes flattening, not because you don't care, but because you care in a wiser way. Understand this clearly. When outcomes own your peace, you become manipulable. Anyone who can influence the result can influence your emotional state. That is a fragile way to live. Detachment restores sovereignty. It makes your inner world self-governed. You are no longer easily rattled by praise or crushed by disappointment. You experience both, but neither hijacks you. There is a quiet confidence in that posture. People sense it. You feel less desperate, less reactive, more solid. Practice negative visualization, a Stoic exercise that builds this strength. Briefly imagine that the outcome you want does not happen. Not to depress yourself, but to remind yourself that you would still exist, still think, still choose your response. You would still have agency. This exercise reduces fear because it exposes the exaggeration in your mind. Most outcomes are not existential threats. They are events, temporary, passing. Your character, however, endures. Another practical habit: detach from immediate feedback. When you complete something meaningful, delay checking for responses, reactions, or results, even for a short while. Use that space to ground yourself. Take a slow breath. Relax your shoulders. Remind yourself that your worth was never on trial. This small act builds emotional independence. You stop chasing reassurance. You start generating stability from within. It helps to redefine what peace actually means. Peace is not constant pleasure, it is steadiness. It is the ability to remain centered amid fluctuation. Think of it as an internal anchor. Outcomes will rise and fall. That is their nature. Your task is to anchor yourself to principles instead. Courage, patience, discipline. When you anchor there, you are less tossed around by circumstance. You become adaptable without being destabilized. You must also confront your attachment to identity. Sometimes you cling to outcomes because they confirm a story you tell about yourself. Let that story soften. You are not your last result. You are not your best achievement. You are not your worst failure. You are the ongoing process of choices you make each day. When you internalize that, outcomes lose their grip on your emotional life. Repeat to yourself, especially in moments of tension, "I control my effort, I release the rest." Say it until it feels natural. Write it down, reflect on it. Build it into your mental reflexes. Over time, this becomes your default stance. You act with purpose. You release with grace. You remain steady. And here is the paradox: when outcomes stop owning your peace, you often perform better. Because you are no longer paralyzed by fear of loss or intoxicated by desire for praise. You operate from clarity. You think more strategically. You recover faster from setbacks. You celebrate without becoming complacent. Your emotional range becomes more stable, and stability breeds strength. Detachment is not emotional numbness. It is emotional discipline. It is the refusal to let the external world dictate your internal climate. You still care deeply. You still pursue excellence. But you refuse to mortgage your peace for a future that is not guaranteed. That is power. Quiet power. Durable power. So start today. Notice where you are bargaining your calm for a specific result. Catch it, breathe, loosen your grip, shift your focus back to what you can actually command: your thoughts, your actions, your attitude. Guard your peace like something sacred, because it is. And remember, as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, receive without pride, let go without attachment. Practice that daily. Live it deliberately. When you do, you become untouchable, not because nothing affects you, but because nothing owns you. Number 10, the less you need, the stronger you become. Let's dive in deeply. Imagine for a moment that everything you think you need, the approval of others, the constant validation, the material comforts, the attention, the applause, isn't holding you up but holding you back. You see, the less you need, the stronger you become. This isn't just a clever saying you scroll past on a quote board. It's a reality that you can feel in your bones once you allow it to settle in your mind. The Stoics didn't chase after comfort or cling to the world's applause. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Strength doesn't come from the accumulation of things or from people bending to your will. It comes from the spacious freedom of being complete within yourself, needing little from the outside world to feel whole. You might resist this at first because society teaches you to want, to crave, to depend. But notice how every time you cling to something, someone's praise, a job, a relationship, you give away a piece of your power. Your equilibrium becomes fragile. One comment, one unexpected turn of events, and your inner balance wobbles. Now imagine what happens when you remove that fragility. When your happiness, your calm, your sense of self no longer relies on external factors, you become unshakable. You operate from a place where storms can rage, people can try to manipulate you, circumstances can twist unexpectedly, and yet your peace remains untouched. That's real strength, forged quietly within, independent of the world's chaos. Here's a practical way to start. Identify one thing in your life you constantly reach for, the thing you feel you cannot live without, and ask yourself, what happens if I let it go, even for a day? Notice the tension, the discomfort, and then notice that you survive. You don't crumble. Your mind doesn't explode. Your world doesn't end. Each time you let go of a need, small, then bigger, you're training yourself. You're building the internal muscles that the Stoics so often spoke of. Seneca wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." The less you need, the less fear can control you, and fear is the silent hand behind most human weakness. Think about it. Every attachment you carry is like extra weight on your shoulders. Every expectation, every desire, every must-have you cling to is another chain binding you. And each time you loosen those chains, you feel a little lighter, a little freer. When you reach the point where you truly need very little, when your inner core is firm, self-reliant, and content, you become untouchable not in arrogance or defiance, but in serenity. People may try to sway you, tempt you, provoke you, but their power over you is gone. You are already full. You are already enough. This doesn't mean you abandon life or stop enjoying things. You can taste the sweetness of success, the joy of connection, the beauty of your surroundings, but now you taste them without desperation, without a dependence that leaves you vulnerable. You participate fully in life while holding nothing too tightly. You observe the world's ups and downs with clarity because your mind isn't in constant panic over loss or lack. That balance is subtle but revolutionary. You aren't pulled here and there by every whim, every disappointment. You are steady. You are anchored. And that anchoring creates a kind of quiet strength that others sense instinctively. To make this real, try a daily exercise. For 1 hour, detach from something you usually rely on, a phone, social media, even a habitual comfort. Don't distract yourself. Simply be aware of your desire and let it pass. You'll notice the craving, the pull, and then the relief when it doesn't dominate you. Each repetition is training. Each act of voluntary simplicity increases your resilience. You are practicing the art of needing less, and every step strengthens the invisible armor that shields your inner life from the storms outside. Also, reflect on the difference between wanting and needing. Wanting is natural. Needing is dangerous. Wanting can bring joy, but needing can enslave you. The less you need, the fewer strings are attached to your happiness. You start living not at the mercy of circumstances, but with a sense of sovereignty over your mind. As Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. Your needs are often the very things that lie beyond your control. Release them. Strengthen yourself by realizing you can exist, thrive, and even flourish without them. And here's the beauty. The less you need, the more generous you can become. Generosity flows naturally from inner abundance. When you are not grasping, you can give freely, not out of compulsion, not to gain, but because your heart is spacious. Strength and detachment walk together. The stronger you are in yourself, the more resilient you are to manipulation, to disappointment, to chaos. You stop trembling at the prospect of loss. You begin to move with a quiet certainty that comes from the core, from a mind trained to survive without needing the world to bend to its desires. So start small. Let go of one need. Observe the freedom. Expand it. Let the world test you. Let events challenge you. You will notice something remarkable. The less you need, the less the world can shake you. Your calm, your power, your dignity, they become unassailable. This is the essence of Stoic detachment. This is why the greatest masters of mind, from Marcus Aurelius to Epictetus, emphasized self-sufficiency above all. Strength is not in dominance. It is in the serene ability to stand firm when everything else wobbles. The less you need, the stronger you become. Embrace that truth, train for it, live it. Step into a space where nothing outside can steal your peace because you carry it within, unshakable, untouchable, entirely your own. When you master detachment, you stop begging the world to validate you. You stop chasing applause, fearing rejection, and clinging to outcomes you can't control. Instead, you stand grounded, calm, steady, unshaken. That's real power, not loud, not dramatic, just unbothered. Remember what Epictetus taught. Focus only on what is within your control. When you release the rest, you become untouchable, not because nothing happens to you, but because nothing owns you. So practice letting go. Practice observing without reacting. Practice choosing peace over ego. And watch how your presence alone begins to command respect.